Perfect. Amazing. Right on the dot.
Told folks I'd be here at 6:30, so a few minutes early was always for any situation.
Well, let's do a little sound check on this. And then we can tell them, but they will share, the two people on this side can share this microphone, and the two people on that side can share this microphone, which thank you, Ken, for making this happen, and our AV people back there, Bill and Jenny. And so why don't you put that on if you don't mind?
Now, I have limited experience. Is it going in my pocket?
I kind of put mine on my belt loop, like back there.
Okay.
And then kind of hide it behind your tie or wherever you want, but however you're comfortable. I'm sorry, this tool, we don't have, I ordered more, but they didn't come in time. This one's a tiny bit shorter, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm a tiny bit shorter too.
We'll love to sit.
Maybe, yeah.
A little platform to put
But they don't make phone books, I think.
And we do have like a higher like wooden stool, but it's got no back. So I just thought this
One
would
of
be.
them over.
Or he'll do it. He'll do it in the back right now. So why don't you have a seat, because that'll be
Okay.
really.
Okay, I think I'm in. All right.
Yep. So what I would try not to do
Yeah.
is move too much.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Just because you hear. So why don't you say something? We'll do a little test. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, test 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Does it sound okay?
Can you hear me?
You're on. He's on. It might need to go higher.
Yeah, green light's on.
And here's your water, which I'll
Thank
put
you.
down there. We also. Hey, let's try it again. Test.
Okay, how's that?
That's better.
I think that works.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So you're going to put him way down, right, for now? Perfect. Thank you.
continue. We will have programs in the fall. We will look forward to your attention and your attendance. Go ahead and put.
Yeah, that's great.
So you guys
So
all
we're gonna have, that's gonna be a question.
So we're up there.
I'm assuming Rich is going to.
Rich is going to do the whole thing. So we are after the Q&A. Rich loves it coming up. Okay, good. So we'll stand here. You guys will.
Friends, good evening, and welcome back to the Forum on the Green. My name is Daniel Vigilante, and I serve as senior pastor here at the Presbyterian Church in Morristown.
And I'm Alexandra Mead, and I am the Director of Children, Youth, and Family Ministries here, and we are truly glad that you were able to join us here live and for all of those that are watching us online.
We actually have more people who are watching online than who could be here in the room, maybe because of the weather, maybe because they had to put the kids to bed tonight. We are also so glad that the Walsh Memorial Bell Choir from the Presbyterian Church in Morris Plains could be here tonight as well, sharing some pre-event music. Those incredible ringers were the winners at last year's Morristown On Stage, and weren't they awesome? Let's thank them one more time.
And thank all of you. I thank you for coming and taking the time to be out on this yucky evening, on a weeknight, in the middle of everything else that you have going on, to be part of this important conversation. Tonight we'll be hearing from amazing educators and experts helping us think more deeply about screens, students, and the search for belonging.
It is an honor for us to be hosting this panel and to be hosting all of you. But first, Alexandra, I feel like I need to make a confession. I have, from time to time, rarely really on very extreme occasions, picked up my phone to check something and then resurfaced like an hour later, completely dazed after doom scrolling on TikTok. And I am a grown adult most of the time.
But that raises an important question. Because if it's hard for us to deal with constant notifications and distractions, algorithms, and online pressure, what must it be like for 12-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds?
When we began the Forum on the Green, we hoped it would become a space where our community could gather around conversations like this one, conversations that help us to approach life with maybe a little more wisdom and a little more compassion.
As someone who works closely with children, teens, and families on a daily basis, I can tell you that young people are thoughtful and perceptive. They are navigating a world that's constantly connected, constantly moving, constantly asking for their attention. So the question isn't whether technology is good or bad, but how do we help students build resilience, identity, and find belonging in the midst of it?
We are so grateful for the educators and the experts who are with us this evening. They bring experience, research, and real-world understanding to this conversation that affects all of us.
So whatever brings you here tonight, if you're a parent, grandparent, educator, student, neighbor, or simply someone who cares, we thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Now, please welcome our moderator for the evening. Richard Schwartz is a retired educator. He is a newly inaugurated grandfather and an all-around incredible person, and he will be introducing tonight's panel. Please welcome Rich Schwartz. Woo!
Thank you very much. It's so wonderful to have you all here. Our panel's coming in right now. Thank you for coming out on what I know is not the easiest night to be driving around Morristown. Thank you for being here. And I want to welcome you. I want to join Daniel in welcoming you to our church. We hope you'll enjoy your time with us this evening. And this is our second installment in our two-part Forum on the Green series on belonging in the age of loneliness. In 2024, the NYU social scientist Jonathan Haidt, and if you're a note taker, that's Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, published a provocative book, The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. In it, he argued that the advent of Apple's iPhone in 2007, combined with decades-long changes in child-rearing, led to a troublesome change for American children as a play-based childhood got replaced by a phone-based childhood. Likening parenting to gardening, Haidt writes of America, "We have let the internet and social media take over the garden. We have left young people to grow up in digital social networks rather than in communities where they can put down roots. Then we are surprised that our children are lonely, starving for real human connections. Elsewhere, Haidt and his colleague Jean Twenge found that loneliness and friendlessness appear to have increased in Western democracies as teenagers began to carry smartphones. And before we misunderstand Haidt, here's what he told Ezra Klein in a recent podcast. So no, he's saying, I don't blame, look, of course, parents should stand up and parent, but so many of us are trying, and it's really, really hard. It's really everybody's fighting all the time with their kids over this tech. We didn't ask for these fights. So I don't blame the parents. I don't blame the teachers. I blame the companies. So tonight, we'll explore our children's use of digital devices, especially phones and social media, implications for children's belonging in this age of widespread loneliness, and, most important perhaps, what we can do to serve our children if we team up. I'm an old school teacher, so I have a central question for us all. If, for many of our young, smartphones and other devices can promote loneliness and discourage belonging, what can we do to help and to save our kids from short and long-term harm? Now, Professor Haidt and his colleagues come from great universities across the nation and the world. But what's our situation locally? Well, the four people who make up our panel will share with us a valuable local perspective. And they are Mr. Mark Manning, principal of Morristown High School, Dr. Jennifer Giordano, Director of School Counseling and Mental Health Services for the Morris School District, Ms. Jessie Cardona, Trail Program Clinician at Morristown High, and Ms. Adia Harris, I apologize, Adia, Coordinator of Youth Enrichment, Teen Engagement and Youth Programs at Cornerstone Family Programs in Morristown. We want to welcome you all for being here and taking part tonight. We know you've all had full days working with our young people. So let's get right to it. We'd like to start with the problem itself. We've all come out tonight because our children struggle with navigating a world of constant distraction from screens and continuous access to information. So, what are you seeing? What are you seeing on the ground in the schools of the Morris School District? What are we seeing in the community? Let's start there.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for welcoming us into this beautiful church. What are we seeing? We're seeing students inundated with information, right, from a variety of sources. Information from the internet, information from their peers, information from their teachers. It's as if every day when they wake up, it's a fire hose of information that is readily available on their phones, on their Chromebooks, their laptops, whatever. And what we're really seeing is young people struggling with how to manage that water cannon of information that awaits them when they open their eyes in the morning, when they are on the bus on their way to school, when they are at lunch and they're on their phones. It's again, I'm an old guy, right? I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And when I wanted information, I had to work for it, right? I had to go to the library. I had to open books. I had to look through a card catalog. At some point, microfilm, remember that stuff? Microfiche, microfilm.
Yes.
Right. We really had to work for information, and we could be discriminating with the information that we access, the information that we consumed. And young people today are just bombarded with a lot of information that many of them developmentally have difficulty navigating, right? They have difficulty understanding it. They have difficulty separating the wheat from the chaff. So that's something that I'm seeing.
I mean, from a mental health standpoint, I think we're seeing a lot of consequence of technology and social media. I mean, one thing I can certainly, I can share with you is that when children are afforded access to social media early in their adolescence and in their pre-adolescence, it actually changes the way their brain grows and develops. It actually decreases the cerebral matter, okay? So things that contribute to making good decisions, emotional regulation, aspects of development that are sort of learned over time are either accelerated and not in a good way, or they are decelerated by that constant firing, stimulus, and access. And it changes the way the brain works. And so, to Mark's point, they don't know what to do with it. And it's not just consciously they don't know what to do with it, their body doesn't know what to do with it. And oftentimes that leads to that dysregulation, both from a biological standpoint as well as an emotional standpoint, really does lead to depression, anxiety, a heightened sense of self-awareness and comparison, and it leads our young people astray sometimes because they're encountering feelings that they don't necessarily know how to manage, and they don't really understand where it's coming from because it's not conscious. It's oftentimes, as I said, biological. So that's where I think we see an escalation in a lot of the related mental health concerns that are often spoken about in the same conversation with social media and technology.
Hello, everyone. On my aspect, I'm seeing a lot of teens who have a lot of information quick at their fingertips, but they don't have any time to process what is going on. We have teens who can connect with the outside world very easily, but feel lonely almost every single night. So big contradictions in like their everyday life, so huge effects from social media.
Adina, where's that loneliness coming from? I mean, they're surrounded by their peers all day long.
Well, it comes from just the source of information itself. There's an abundance of information that they receive throughout the day, so it forces them to compare their life, compare their parents, compare what they have in a sense. So because of that, it forces them to be lonely because then it forces them to compare in a sense of what they see on social media, the lives they see, the streamers, the TikToks. We know how viral and how quick things can go viral. That in itself forces them into a deep depression because they don't have what they see or they want what they see, and then it invokes envy and jealousy. So it forces them to feel lonely even when they're not.
I just agree with my colleagues here. I see that as well. I kind of call it more like a socialization emptiness to some degree. They count on social media to be their social outlet, but then when they are alone or in their rooms, they get on their phones and they just start to try to engage again, and it's a very slippery slope. And it's like Ade said, that it's just that they want fast results with a false reality.
And can I just add one thing? It also is very different from, I'm 33 years old. When I was growing up, things that I wanted to know, I went to trusted adults to get that information, right? Whereas a lot of our teens, our young adults, that's not what they're doing. They are now in their rooms by themselves searching for those answers, where the answer, like if I was to go to a trusted adult at my school, there's a boxed answer as what I was going to get. They have a broad spectrum of information. So there's information or questions about like their personal lives, things that's happening with their bodies, things like questions about their sexuality, whatever it is. They're no longer going to the source. They're now going to social media. They're going to the internet, which is confusing them, especially for those who have faith-based homes and things like that. The world will contradict what you're being taught at home. So,
and so much of this stuff, it's like the Wild West.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
Absolutely.
there are no real rules.
No, not at all.
How's it all manifesting itself at Morristown High or in the schools of the district or, at Cornerstone at Neighborhood House? How are you seeing this playing itself out?
For me, there is no boundaries, like you said. So because we have teens, everyone matures differently. So if you have a teen who's 13 but just new to experiences, having that type of information exposed to them all at once will absolutely confuse them. If you think about social media, there is now, like I think a couple of months ago, Instagram launched like their teen account, where like you have to be a certain age to have that account. That's something that's very new. So think about it. Up until that point, you could be a teenager just on social media with all this information, with all the guidelines, you're exposed to, the nakedness, the ugly truth of the world with no parameters on the information. There's no one that says, you know what, you're too young, you shouldn't. Or there's no one that will track, what they're exposed to, which hurts it makes the job of the parents a lot harder. I know I have a teenager at home, and also in school, it's the same thing. You're fighting that will for them because they see themselves as adults, they have all this information now, and it's like, no, but you're still a child, and you still have so much to, so it's that fight within us and educators.
I think it's also really hard for students to understand where their own limits are within the context of using social media or using technology and then not being reliant upon it. So, one of the things that I'm seeing from as young as our kindergarten and elementary schools and up is there's a reliance on technology, and that prohibits them from feeling comfortable having a dialogue with another person sitting across from them or sitting with them. And that's something that's become much more prevalent, certainly since, the time of COVID. But we see it. We see that technology is being used to serve as a babysitter sometimes. And as a result of that, when we ask our students to then engage in a classroom, either with their peers or educators, it's really hard. As I said, their comfort is more with the screen than it is with another human being. And so that's a really difficult dynamic, not only as educators and counselors, but for the young people themselves to try and navigate. And again, not really understanding, why do I feel this discomfort, or why is there an awkwardness? So there's a big gap to bridge, and we work on that every day at every developmental level.
Right, and we're seeing students at a young age, being exposed to mature themes, right? Being exposed to material that is developmentally beyond them. They're not prepared for a lot of the information that they're accessing, and it's oftentimes giving them a very skewed, distorted view of these themes. They're not emotionally equipped to kind of process some of the information that they're accessing, and they kind of have a distorted reality of a lot of the things that, had they been exposed to them later when it's more appropriate, and they're in a developmental stage to be able to handle it, we're finding that they're not. And I think that's causing a lot of the anxiety, the depression, the isolation that we're seeing in our young folks today.
And in 2023, a Common Sense Media poll found that something like 45% of teens were regularly accessing adult or mature. Mature would be 17 plus, adult would be 18 plus sites, such as Pornhub, fantasy sports sites, betting apps, adult messaging sites, and forums, and violent games. And most of this is not happening in our schools. and we'll talk about phone bans in a couple minutes. Most of it is happening away from school.
Yeah.
And much of it is happening probably after 9 o'clock at night, correct?
Quite a bit of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that's really interesting is, and that we all know, is that, peer relationships with our adolescents are a priority. But when that's not accessible or seems inaccessible, a lot of our teens turn to technology and social media for that connection. But they don't know who's on the other side of that phone or that screen. And so that's really dangerous, of course. But I think it's also happening in the evenings, as you say, when they are sort of detached from the routine and they're supposed to be maybe in bed, sleeping, or winding down and, sort of decompressing from their day. A lot of our teens and even our preteens are resorting to their phones and to technology as a source of pacification. But what is happening is it's actually amping them up and keeping them engaged and keeping them stimulated as opposed to allowing them to relax and decompress. And again, that much sort of amplitude in activity is creating a sense of really being unable to sort of regulate and become calm and rest and just care for yourself. So that's lending itself to a community of young people who are very anxious because their bodies are never able to relax. And that's something that we've talked about as a group that we'd love to talk more about with you tonight, because we have some ideas as to how to help your children kind of detach from what almost is, I hate to say, a dependency. Clearly a dependency.
And I want to talk next just about what schools are doing, but then I'd like to go, once we're done with that, over to some ideas about what parents and grandparents might be able to do. Jesse, you were just kind of, I could hear you kind of, endorsing. You want to add?
No, I agree with Dr. Giordano. In my program, in the mornings, I usually get in pretty early, and a lot of my students come in, and they just kind of crash for the last 30 or 40 minutes of the morning. And it's surprising to me, because I'm like, you left at 2:15 yesterday. How are you so tired? And they always tell me they were up watching a movie on their tablet or on their phone. They were gaming. They were talking in group chats. You name it, that's the story, and they really just want to crash out for a while. Usually I let them, because obviously the school hasn't started yet, but it astounds me how tired they actually are. And I will tell you, they are completely knocked out for 30 minutes. I envy teenagers. They can fall asleep at the drop of a dime. I wish I still can do that. And once the bell rings, I wake them up, they leave without a problem. But I am just still kind of wondering, like, what's going on at home? Where's the I don't want to blame parents, but where's the supervision as to the phones? Like, it's 9, it's 10 p.m. These kids have done their homework and they need to put it away and kind of, like Dr. Giordano says, is decompress from the day to start anew the next day, and they're just not doing it, and we're seeing it.
An Eagleton Institute poll, Rutgers Eagleton Institute poll of New Jersey parents found that parents had a pretty good understanding of how much time their children were spending online, on social media, on their phones. And it was a pretty good correlation between the two. But the one area where parents didn't get it right, where they badly underestimated their children's social media and cell phone use, was on time after 9 o'clock at night. Parents did not, for the most part, understand that their kids were, in some ways, almost just beginning to kick it in to high gear at about that time. And that will be something that we may come back and talk about in just a minute. But let's just talk about what's going on in schools. You must be pushing back against digital overload. You have to be encouraging belonging and trying to push back against loneliness. You must be trying to empower students in the struggle. Are there ways? Can you hear me? Okay?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think your
Okay.
you don't mind using that.
Okay. I'd have to use my teacher's voice a little bit better. Yeah, I got to talk into the mic. Can everybody hear me?
There we go.
I'm so sorry. All right, now we're in business. How are you and your colleagues trying to push back against the situation that we've been describing here? Go ahead.
Sure. So at Morristown High School, we have several measures in place. We are on our second year of a cell phone ban during instructional time. And I can say confidently that I think it is probably 85 to 90% effective. Students walk into their classroom. Every class that they walk in, we have the phone caddies on the wall. Students are required to place their phones. Teachers are required to check to make sure that the phones are in there. Most of our teachers use the caddies to take attendance. I'm saying it's 85 to 90% effective because I'm not naive enough to believe that high school students 100% are compliant 100% of the time, right? But I can say confidently that over the past 2 years, it is the norm. I've had scores of students over the past 2 years come up to me very quietly in the hallway, out of earshot of their friends, and thank me, telling me, Mr. Manning, I never realized how distracted I was in class when I had access to my phone. So, we know there's still work to do. The students who try to put a burner phone, the students who say, I forgot it, we're learning all of the tricks. And we're taking steps to mitigate those kind of end runs. In addition, our students have district-issued Chromebooks. On the Chromebooks, there are many filters. Many sites are blocked. Most social media sites are blocked on their Chromebook in the school building. We have software on all of our district-issued Chromebooks. It's called GoGuardian. We get GoGuardian alerts when students are searching things that are either harmful, self-harm, pornographic, inappropriate, etc. The alerts come to their guidance counselor first, administrative second, and again, I've had countless conversations with young people over the past, I'd say, 5 years that we've had this software in place, helping them understand the error of their way. In addition, I think somebody mentioned COVID. COVID really did a number on us instructionally when we had to rely on a virtual instructional platform. And what we found was that when we came back after COVID, teachers were still overly reliant on the computer. And we had to kind of recalibrate our approach to delivering instruction. And we trained all of our teachers in what's called the blended method, where there is an appropriate time for technology in a classroom, right? There's an appropriate time for it. There's also an appropriate time to close the computers and get back to just plain old good instruction, paper and pencil, group work, teacher lecture. We really did have to retrain, and also keep in mind, during that time period, we had a lot of first-year teachers employed, and that's all they knew when we came out of COVID. Hit the playlist and let the kids just stare at a screen for 80 minutes. So it took us a while to kind of recalibrate, retrain, and I'm happy to say now I'm in the hallways constantly in the hallways, sitting in classrooms. That's kind of where I get my juice, right? I don't get my juice in my office. I get my juice hanging out with kids and watching them in action in classrooms. And I am happy to say that I've seen tremendous movement away from constant screen time and back to just old-fashioned good pedagogy. So there's some of the things that we're doing. And again, we realize it's a constant battle, because what we have to remember, I left the classroom in 2005, right? I left the classroom in 2005 pre-technology. And not to sound egotistical here, but I was the font of all information, right? In my classroom, I was the font of all information. It was me and the textbook. And I told you how to work the textbook and all of that. Teachers today, it's a competition. It is a constant competition with technology, where teachers kind of feel, you know, like secondhand in their classroom, because the kids feel that technology can do such a better job. I don't agree with that, but that's the uphill battle that a lot of our teachers are facing every day.
So in the classroom, you're really pushing your teachers to reduce the screen time itself.
Absolutely.
How's your co-curricular program work into this theme of pushing back against loneliness and encouraging belonging?
Right. We have about 65 co-curricular clubs at Morristown High School, ranging from Habitat for Humanity, Gay Straight Alliance, Model UN, Key Club, you name it, we have it at Morristown High School. And they become an opportunity during lunch, because all of our clubs meet during lunch. They become an opportunity for students to really socialize. There's no technology involved in our co-curricular clubs. Kids come together during lunch, our service club, or they're working on projects within the community. You know, it really is heartwarming to sit in on some of those meetings, seeing kids with their phones aside and just engaging in conversation around the common topic or the common theme associated with each of those co-curricular clubs.
Right, and you cannot handle the lacrosse stick or play a trumpet while you're holding a phone.
Right.
And just, yeah, I think all of those reactions. Now, you wind up working with, you know, people who in many cases are coming in having had problems with loneliness, having had problems with a lack of belonging. Could you just talk to us a little bit about the kind of things that are going on?
Yes, we would love to. I'm going to let Jesse speak about our trail program as an example of how we kind of are using digital literacy in a very constructive way. As you can imagine, when you have a counseling program, the expectation is it's always going to be either individual or groups interacting. But my very contemporary colleagues came together with me last year and said, you know, I think we do need to loop a form of technology into this counseling process responsibly to engage students. And we have a fantastic platform for that, which you can talk about, and how that works with the students to engage them and kind of.
Yeah, so at Morristown High School, we do have the TRAIL program. I am one of the clinicians there. My co-partner is Lydia Diaz, but she's not here today. And TRAIL stands for Therapeutic Resources Through Assessment, Intervention, and Learning. So it is a mental health program at the high school, and it's not given to a lot because it's on a smaller scale. But in this program, we do have the most acute students that are put into our program, and it varies between mental health and behavioral concerns as well. But in this program, they get me, which is I am a therapist, and I am open to them at any point of the school day. Usually we have a session once a week. However, the beauty of the program is that they can come in anytime they're feeling depressed, anxious, having negative thoughts, are tired in the morning. or just feeling like they don't belong. So they do come in, we have our session. We also hold group because this program is implemented into their school schedules. So in this group session, they are in a classroom with a teacher. And this is where the technology comes in, because we do have a curriculum that they do follow every time they have trail. So basically in the curriculum, we have videos that they do see, and it's all approved. And it's video that what peers go through, and the topics differ every day. And then at the end of the videos, they have questions that they do answer as to how it kind of applies to them. And the topics can be very sensitive, from self-harming, isolation, social media, there's sexting, and there's even to a point of, maybe some sort of abuse going on with them. So that is Trail in kind of a nutshell. I have to say it has grown. It's a really good program at the high school. I've been told that some of our students who had attendance issues have improved. I don't monitor the attendance, but I take it from good sources here that it's true. And I find that the program works. These students come in, and we have students, again, that range from different issues and concerns, but they come in and they want to talk. They put down the phones. We also have drop-in lunch, where they can come in and actually be on their phone, because sometimes it helps them get through the day. But what I've been noticing, which I've told Mark and Jen, that they don't get on the phone. They don't get on. They come in with a friend, or they want to talk with myself and my colleague, and we have 2 interns on the graduate level who also work, that the students want to talk with them too, and they'll talk about anything. They just want to hear themselves talk. But we talk about anything, and it works. They have their lunch sometimes in our office, or sometimes they just sit with a friend and they want to talk about a project that's coming due. Some students even want to talk about the curriculum. What are they going to see on the next video? What group project we're going to do in the next group? They become very involved in the program. So it seems to work. As that phone is put away, and I've been seeing it more increasingly put away throughout the school day, more and more, and we're heading in the right direction. We're just not there yet.
One of the things that I wanted to add, embedded in our curriculum is appropriate use of technology. I shared with the team when we met earlier. I was fortunate enough to sit in on a post-conference with our supervisor of health and phys ed. She was conducting a post-conference with one of our health teachers, and coincidentally, it happened to be a lesson on sexting. And I was thrilled to hear this conversation back and forth with the teacher and his supervisor about how well the lesson went on the topic of sexting in our 9th grade curriculum. So there's, not only do we have cell phone ban and filters and Go Guardian and all of that, also embedded within our curriculum is the appropriate use of technology and the inappropriate use of technology.
So an awful lot of people that are here tonight are parents or grandparents, and I think it's time for us, for the 4 of you who are people who have dedicated your professional lives to working with young people and are around young people an awful lot, to maybe talk a little bit about some ideas about how parents and or grandparents, guardians, caregivers could help their kids in this fraught situation. So let's see what some of your ideas are.
I have a very strong belief in you need to model the behaviors that you expect from your children or your grandchildren. And we're all guilty of grabbing the phone. I was saying to the group when we met that I walked into a doctor's office the other day, and 10 years ago, if I walked into a doctor's office, there would be people sitting around, and you would say hello and acknowledge, and maybe even engage in a conversation. No one spoke. In fact, nobody even looked at each other. Everyone was on their phone, and it actually impacted me because I was as guilty as anyone else in the reception area. And I think that's a very important piece of information to remember, that if you are sitting at the dinner table, or you are sitting on your couch and you are on your phone, and that is what your child is seeing, that is what you are modeling, and that is what they are accepting as appropriate behavior. So if we want our children to engage and be a bit more conversational, and learn comfort in that conversation, we have to put our phones down. And as Mark mentioned, in the school environment, it has become tremendously advantageous to have the phones away. But unless we reinforce that at home and outside of school, it's going to be mixed messaging. And as much as we pride ourselves on, being important and significant influences on our students, as parents and grandparents and family members, you're far more influential than we'll ever be. So that would be my advice. I also think it provides more opportunity then for you to remember how to engage and how to have maybe some of those tough conversations that will emerge when the phone isn't available.
I'm going to apologize up front here because I don't want to sound pedantic or overly preachy. I'm going to speak my experience as a parent, and I want to begin with the analogy of these instruments of technology, and most notably the phones, right? It's a tool, right? It's a tool, and tools are made for good, but tools can often be used for not good. And I would venture to guess that 95% of our students who have these tools, these phones, have been purchased by their parents. And parents are paying the bill, just like I did for my 3 children. So if I'm putting a tool in the hands of my children, and I don't have a conversation with them about how to use it, it would be like putting a jigsaw in the hands of one of my children and say, go figure it out. You figure out how to use this for good. So the first piece of advice that I'd like to give parents, because again, I did this as a parent, before I purchased and paid for the monthly fee for these devices, I had a very clear and very direct conversation with each of my kids in terms of what my expectations were with regard to the use of the device that I'm handing them, the tool that I'm handing them. The other piece of advice that I'd like to share, because this is what my wife and I insisted on, because again, we purchased these things. 9 o'clock, everything with a plug was on the kitchen table. Your cell phone, your school-issued laptop, whatever had a plug, it was on the kitchen table, and that's where it was being charged for the night. And if you're looking for something to do from 9 o'clock until you fall asleep, read a book, right? We have to kind of get back to basics, right? We the adults, need to retake control of the runaway train a little bit with these devices, because as you've heard up here, kids are on these things till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, with outside of their parents' purview. The other thing we all need to get back to family dinner time, where we're, like Jen said, not only are we modeling the behavior of putting the device aside, but modeling the behavior of engaging in conversation with one another, right? That's so important. And again, I'm sorry if I sounded preachy. I'm sorry but I'm passionate about this. I have this conversation every summer. We have a 9th grade parent orientation, and I get on my soapbox and I have this same conversation with parents every year. And I felt compelled to have the conversation here tonight.
Can I jump in? I'm just going to add to that. For I'm a new parent. I have a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old. So I will say, if collecting their devices at 9 o'clock is not ideal for your teen, if you don't want to get into that fight, because we know it's going to be a fight sometimes, what I would suggest, which is something my best friend taught me, is you can always do the parental controls. So all the iPhones now, they have where you, as a parent, because you purchase the phone and you pay the bill, you have access in your settings where you can turn off or turn on your parental settings. So at whatever the time that you and your spouse decides that is enough for your child, whether they are in high school or middle school or elementary school, you can set a timer. And at 9 o'clock, whatever features you want to shut off will shut off. So that way, like for me, I don't like arguing with my son. He's in 7th grade, and most times he wins. But that's what I've learned. So it's like, and he's accustomed to it. There is no fight because you don't have the access. So you can put the phone down, you can put it on a charger, because his argument for me was, well, Mom, I need it for my alarm in the morning, which I'm like, that's kind of clever. So that was my way of getting around that, to where we don't have to have that fight, but I still win. I regain my power, right? At 9 o'clock, you can't go on social media. You can't do certain things. You may go on to play a game, certain games, right? You can literally filter the settings to however you want. So if you want to allow them to play games, but you don't want them to play games, whatever, you have all that control. And then it does take back your control, and also it gets them to do what we want them to do, which is turn it off, let's go to bed. And that way there's no argument. So I just wanted to add that in.
And can I just say really quickly, they want you to think they don't want you to take their phones away, but they do. Yeah. They're looking for that that parental boundary to be set. They're also looking for, like, why can't we have pizza night? Or, why can't we have, like, puzzle night? Let's see who puts the last puzzle piece in, and, you guys get to make donuts or whatever the case may be. Teenagers are missing that. They probably got that type of discipline when they were younger, but as they get older, we tend to loosen the reins a little bit, and they miss that. And they say that to me, too, at the school. They're like, yeah, well, I'm 16 now, so my mom is kind of like, she kind of just lets me do what I want. And I'm like, no. And, and they're like, we used to have pizza night, or we used to go for walks, or, go get Starbucks in the morning. And they do tend to miss that. But they'll tell you no, but they're telling me that they're missing that,
And one more thing I wanted to add also, I'm sorry, is checking your children's phone, right? I think as parents, sometimes we feel like, oh, no, it's the whole privacy thing. I pay all the bills in my house. I pay for the phone. I'm checking the phone. And what I realized with my teenager is that when I first started doing it, it was like we fought about it, but and not that he got better, because you can delete some things, but you can't delete everything, right? But he knows that I'm going to check it, so there's a certain level of respect that he has now, and he expects it. Like, he knows, and there's never like, oh, okay, every Tuesday I'm going to check it. It is very random. When I find, as parents, we have that feeling in our hearts, in our bones. So whenever I get that feeling, I'm like, let me just see your phone, and I'm not going to check it in front of him, but I will tell him, like, listen, I need to see your phone, and I in the beginning was very hesitant, and it felt weird, and I'm like, maybe I'm invading their privacy, but it has brought us together. We have conversations that sometimes are uncomfortable to have, but are necessary to have, right? Because then it goes back to what we said. We want our children to have those conversations with us, and what's happened with social media is they are now finding those answers in social media with their friends, and you have to bring it back to your children. You have to sometimes force them to talk a little bit, right? So that happens when you go through phones. You'll be surprised at what you find, but you will find it. And then you have to regain your power, and that is one way you need to do it. So I know with being in the 2026s, we say like, oh, privacy is everything, whatever, but no, that's your house. These are your children, and you want to mold them in the way they should be, so you absolutely have to regain that power that way. Please. least for me.
And I think, go ahead.
I just wanted to say one thing also, just in terms of the timing of phone use. I used the term dependency earlier, and I did that very deliberately because it can become a dependency, a reliance. And there's a lot of things that we do that we become dependent on that are for good, right? I mean, we work out, or we eat well, or we come to our places of worship because they feed our soul, they make us feel good. But being dependent on technology is not something that is healthy. And so as parents, as family members and guardians, you of course want to protect your child from doing anything that could be harmful. Well, being on the phone for excessive hours a day is, as I said earlier, it is physically harmful, and it's also creating a dependency on technology today, which unfortunately, as we know, dependency behaviors can oftentimes then travel to other areas of their experience. And we don't want to teach them that dependency is okay. We want to teach them how to manage the interest that they have with everything, technology being one of the priorities that I think we need to focus on. So not to be preachy, but from a body and mind standpoint, I think that's a really sort of important takeaway that we all have to remember.
Jonathan Haidt references four. If you read his book, you'll find that there are four reforms: no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and far more unsupervised play and childhood independence. I think it's important for us to understand that if you have young children who have not yet gotten caught up in this, you have a lot of things that you can probably do to head this off. If your kid is in the middle of this right now, none of us up here are saying that you've got an easy job. All of us empathize with you, and these good people want to be of help as well. It's tough. We said earlier on, Haidt says it is hard. It is a tough fight that has to be waged, and good for you for making that fight. We've got an old Presbyterian hymn here that says, "Fight the good fight with all your might." A lot of times that's what you're having to do. I think I'd like to give people an opportunity to ask some questions. And what we have are microphones up on either side of the room. And if you have a question that you would like to pose, all you have to do is to walk up to that mic and ask your question, and we'll do our best to try to take care of it for you. So the floor is open for any questions.
Thank you all very much for hosting this very informative panel. My name is Heidi. I live in Madison. I am the mom of a 7th grader and a 5th grader, and a local parent who's also been very involved in getting this conversation much more active in our immediate community. I wanted to share a couple of resources for everyone who's here tonight. It's wonderful to see a great turnout here for this too. The first one is, you mentioned Jonathan Haidt's book, Anxious Generation. For anyone who doesn't yet know this, he also wrote a children's companion book called The Amazing Generation. It's wonderful. It's a graphic novel, and when I read Jonathan Haidt's book, Anxious Generation, in early 2024, I was blown away and said, how do I get this message through to my kids? And this book was just released in a children's version. Graphic novel came out Christmas time, but it's great for kids. It was great for my 7th grader. It was great for my 5th grader. It's probably a little too early for much younger than that, but if you're looking for resources, highly encourage you to check out this one. Second thing, another book that's taking storm right now is called The Digital Delusion, which is written by an educator called Jared Cooney Horvath, and he's talking about the whole movement in how do we unwind the ed tech dominance in a school setting. Fantastic read, highly encourage it. Third thing I'd like to share for anyone who doesn't yet know, this weekend, March 6th and 7th, is what's called the Global Day of Unplugging. And you may not be able to do it for 24 hours, but gosh, wouldn't it be great to try it for an hour or two? The more people that are doing this in our community, the easier it is for all of us. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there other questions? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name's Janet Foster. I want to relay a little anecdote and then push back from nieces of mine who attend a very nice public school in Monmouth County, so we can talk about them. They're out of town. They have they're allowed to have their cell phones over lunchtime. And one day in November, when all the early admissions hit the school, kids all over the cafeteria are shrieking with joy or howling in agony. And it just struck me, we have so much conversation about cell phone use in high school, but that canon of information that you so aptly described is the group email that comes out from well-intended sources like college admissions offices and creating a really unfortunate emotional scene. When you got it on paper at home, you had time to digest it, you would talk about it with your family, and if it was a no, your mom probably hugged you a little bit. But this, I want high schools to push back on the universities and say, you can't do this to our young people and have it be this semi-public announcement. And every one of us, through businesses, are sending out blast emails to try to make it easy and get the word out. And yeah, there's a lot of accountability for the adults on how children and young people are taking that. So I see you nodding. This has happened to your lunch hour too, I'm sure.
I would like to just tell you that, interestingly, and thank you for bringing that up, that many universities have actually acknowledged that and have made deliberate attempts to now release decisions on like a Friday afternoon or an early Friday evening. Some people say, oh my goodness, right before a weekend. But I think it's in the mindset of it's a little bit more privatized. It doesn't happen in the middle of a school day, and I think that is catching on. I by no means mean to represent it as a universal practice, but it very much is sort of an awareness that's catching on. So thank you.
Hi, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Everything has been very informative so far. I have a 4- and a 6-year-old, so they're littles, they're getting into school. And when I hear things like this, it kind of makes me want to shield them completely. So my question for you guys is what are you seeing as the risks of maybe that overcorrection where they're not prepared? And I think, Mark, you mentioned it of using technology responsibly, but wanting to also protect them. Do you give them... Yeah, so anyway, that was my question. What are the risks of kind of shielding them too much?
Sure. I'll use an analogy. Years ago, I remember, or many of us in this room might remember, the dawn of the internet, right? The World Wide Web. And initially it was, you can't use the internet to do any schoolwork, right? You have to go to the library, the old-fashioned way that I talked about earlier, right? You gotta work for it. You gotta get in the books, you gotta do the microfilm, the microfiche, all of that, and we kind of made the internet the boogeyman, right? But the genie was out of the bottle, right? And then our task became how to help kids learn to use it responsibly, how to use it effectively, how to use it ethically, right? And we're fighting the same thing now with AI, guys. That's a whole other genie that's out of the bottle. And it's the same, we have to take that same approach, the educative approach. And that's where we root all of our decisions. How do we educate our children, either as educators or parents, or both in my case? How do we educate them to use these resources responsibly, ethically, etc., because it's not going away. We can't shield them from it forever. At some point, they're going to have access to it, and the sooner that we help them learn to use it responsibly, I think the better off they'll be. Absolutely.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say also, you could encourage, like he said, absolutely introduce them. The parental controls, I would think is really good for that age group too, because they're 4 and 6. So unfortunately, they're going to be drawn to that tablet, whether it's watching a show. So just having you and your spouse, like just being strict on the amount of time they're going to be on the tablet, I think that's important. But then also, and I'm going to say this to everyone, introduce your children to things that don't revolve around the phone. Like here at Cornerstone at the Neighborhood House, we have an abundance of programs that we do, whether it's there or a town sport or whatever. Like introduce your children or get them to do play dates, the old-fashioned play dates that we talked about before, right? Because then they don't have the need or the desire to just sit on the tablet. You know, they're out there. Their mind is not, you'll be surprised if you keep them busy, their mind won't even go to that, right? Especially I think about programs like Youth Night, where we're there every Friday. None of the kids, if they're on their phone, they're taking pictures or they're doing like TikToks and dances. They're not really like zoned in on their phone. So just introduction, to different programs and just spending one-on-one time with them and making sure you have a hard time set for the time on the tablet.
I also think with young parents, you're going to probably have to talk with other parents and say, okay, when are the bunch of us gonna say yes to some of these things? And can we hold the line together? Can we agree that we're going to wait, for 2 or 3 years before we introduce these things? It's not easy, and somebody will always kind of break ranks, but I think it's a good way to at least attempt to push back against the child next door who is allowed to do some things that you're not going to allow your children to do.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Amanda.
Hi, I'm Chris Ferdinand, and I'm going to read my daughter's question because she is doing this online. They are Morristown alums, my daughter and son-in-law. They have a 9-year-old, an almost 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And first she said, this is also very amazing. You guys are doing an amazing job, so she really appreciates this. She said, I am in full support of wait until 8th or longer, but have they seen on the side of parents keeping phones accessed delayed for middle or high schoolers a level of disconnect from their peers or who do have phones or feeling like they're on the outs, or are they picked on for not having a phone?
Can I just say one thing? So my 7th grader, when he was in 5th grade, he came home and he cried for, I want to say, like 2 days because he kept saying to me, Mom, literally everyone in my class has a phone but me. And then I went to volunteer in his class and I realized everyone had a phone but him. So it was shocking, right? So did he experience, and he would say, like his friends, they were texting, they were in group chats, and he wasn't, a part of that. And even now as a 7th grader, where there's times where discipline takes account, so I have to take his phone for whatever reason, he does express the fact that he's missed conversations with his friends or text messages. So that will definitely happen where they'll have a disconnect from their peers. I'll give it to you guys. I don't think there's a set age or grade that you should give your child a tablet or a phone. I think as a parent, you have to see your child, right? See where they are mentally and what they're able to handle, and then you make that decision. You get what I'm saying? So there is, I wouldn't say, okay, 7th grade or wait until 8th grade, because what if my child makes it to 8th grade but they're not ready? Right? What if they're not mature enough to handle that information? Or what if I have a really mature 7th grader who could handle that, right, with limitations? So I think the answer for me would be you have to gauge it according to your child. And if you, as a parent, you and your spouse, you feel like that your child is ready, then do it. If not, I think that we also have to give our children credit and have that conversation. Listen, I know you want that, but I don't think you're ready, and this is why. I think when you tell your child the why behind a lot what we do, it makes the conversation a lot easier.
Sure, that makes sense. I wonder if she has a reply. I don't know, the cell phone thing, but thank goodness.
Thank you.
Hi. My perspective is I'm a retired K-8 teacher. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter who's been in preschool from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. since she was 1.5. So that's just a background of our family. And she lives in the town I live in. I see her regularly. We get on the floor and we play at least twice a week. So here's, I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I guess it's a question. My question is about attention span. I've noticed in the past 3 or 4 months, a change. This is not a criticism. No one in my family is listening or watching, but her wanting to move from one activity to the next within minutes. Now, this may be developmental. I'm not an early childhood specialist, so I don't know. I'm asking you. She doesn't seem able to stick with something for more than a few minutes. It could be, let's do this now. Let's do that now. Maybe this is completely normal. I've also noticed a steering away from books. She still likes books, but she's I'm learning about YouTube Kids. I don't really know what that is. So I guess my question is, get to the point, Brian. Could someone speak to attention span with technology and attention span?
Yeah, so, I'm sorry? 4-year-old? Yeah. Yeah. So, certainly technology, any type of digital stimulus is going to create an overabundance of that is going to create a reduction in attention because the brain is learning how to absorb stimulus differently than if it was you and I talking and visualizing it that way, because I can control what I'm seeing in this field. I can't control what's coming at me through a screen. At 4 years old, it would be very hard to tell because at 4 years old, children's attention spans are very variable. But what I would say is, from a neurobiological standpoint, that the less opportunities for that stimulation to occur on a regular basis, the more the brain has the ability to develop on its own timeline and in its own sort of natural progression. If it's rushed, things like attention, things like judgment, things like emotional regulation will be impacted and not positively.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Adia. I was just gonna say, if she's 4 years old, 4 minutes is about the normal time.
Okay.
I work at the neighborhood house. We have a lot of children there. That's normal. But I would say if you see her and her interest with books kind of fading, then I would say every time you guys are around that carpet, you grab a book that you know she loves and you read it with different voices and you make the book come alive, because as children, that's what they're going to be geared to, right? If you make reading cool to them, especially at that age, she's going to gear to it. Also, YouTube Kids is a way better option than just YouTube. So any parents who have children that are under, I want to say 10, you should completely remove the YouTube app from your tablet and have your kids go through YouTube Kids. That's, as a parent, I'm saying that. As an educator, I'm saying that. YouTube Kids is way more preferred. There's a lot more standards and a lot more, so that's, she's good on, if she's looking at YouTube Kids, that's a good step. But then as far as books, make sure you make them come alive.
Okay, thank you. Good.
One sign of one of the social media companies or tech companies actually exercising a little bit of conscience. You know, it's unusual to catch them in that. Sir, you're going to have the last question.
Hi, my name's Douglas. My question is for high school age kids. I think we are seeing, with the world going on today, pretty much an onslaught of new ways to set the world on fire, for lack of a better term, and just we're being flooded with information, with current events going on. How would you be able to filter that out on social media in a way that could help high school age kids?
Thank you.
To be very honest, I don't have an answer to that. But what I would say is there's a lot of good information, and I think that's a part of this conversation that we really didn't tap into. But I think we're here to sort of talk about some maybe pitfalls, right? But there's a lot of good information. So one of the most important elements, I think, of having all that information available is being able to decipher what's accurate and what's real and what's misinformation. And in order to do that, we have to engage our high schoolers in having conversations with trusted adults who know those answers. So as Mark was alluding to earlier, the teacher the principal. The adult is the expert in some cases. The social media and the internet is wonderful. I mean, there's an abundance of information, but it's not all right. It's certainly not all accurate. And it comes to us through different pathways depending on who's publishing the information. So I think having that human connection to verify and discuss what the information means is probably the best way to afford our young adults some perspective.
It's an excellent question, and polls show that students do want instruction in digital citizenship and evaluating social media and evaluating what they see on their screens. I'd also say, as an old classroom teacher, the old just straight blocking and tackling, teaching kids critical thinking, teaching kids to evaluate the sources that they're looking at for legitimacy, for bias, for things like this, I think will help them to sift through. And you're giving them a lifetime skill when you're teaching that.
Are you currently in high school now?
No, I've been out of high school for a while, but I came of age during a very critical time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you the same advice that I would give any of my teens, right? Which is to talk it out. If there is, you are bombarded with a lot of information that could confuse how you're thinking and also put new ideas in your head. So whenever that happens, I always urge any of them to reach out to someone and that you trust, right? So that requires you to have conversations, but to talk that out with someone and kind of process what it is you're receiving. That's always, even for adults, there's things that I receive and I'll call my best friend or I'll call my sister and I'll say, this is what's going on. I would encourage you to do the same thing. If there's something that is in your mind or that's going crazy, reach out to someone and talk to them.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. I'd like to give our panelists an opportunity to kind of bring closure. And, sorry.
Hi, this is more of a comment. Thank you for this talk today. I heard a lot about Jonathan's book, and after watching The Social Dilemma and reading his book, I formulated a screenplay, and I'm directing a film called Let Go right now. That's a love story that basically shows the effect of social media on relationships, because I think beyond limits, we gotta be aware of how it affects our self-love, our ways to have intimate relationships with the people around us. I show things of like losing out on presents, and then death comes, and then you realize what's important. So I just want to offer that to you guys. You can find us letgo_short on Instagram. Follow along and open up a conversation, because I think that we need to come together. My saying is swipe off, reconnect with the real world, and I think we need to have game days and for more than once a year. I don't know. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a helpful reminder. I'd like to end off by giving each of you an opportunity to talk about three things. One, why are we here on a rainy March night? Two, as our audience makes its way home, can you give us some good news? And third, one central piece of advice. So, why are we here, in your mind? Some good news, one piece of good news, and one best piece of advice. And Mark, would you like to go first?
Sure.
And then Adia will have you go, and then we'll go Jen, and then we'll go.
Really?
I'm sorry, Jesse and Jennifer.
I'm here tonight because I love kids, right? I've dedicated my entire professional life, 37 years, working with young people. And I can say without any reservations whatsoever, I love them. I've had the best career anyone could ever ask for. Spending my entire career with young people has just been so rewarding, and I feel so blessed. These kids are great. These kids are phenomenal. They're passionate. They're intelligent, they're committed, I can't say enough good things about this generation. And the advice, talk to them. Just engage them in conversation. Ask them what they're interested in. Ask them what's troubling them. Ask them, just have conversation with them. I think that's the best advice I can give.
I have to ditto what you said. I love my job. I love working with the youth. So I didn't dive too much into what I do, but all things youth, all things enrichment and recreation is me. So that's the why behind why I'm here. My good news tip is there's help. Right? So as parents, as educators, if you're dealing with young people, we don't all hold the answers. Even us 4 or 5 on the stage, none of us knows everything, right? But there is help. So if you are struggling with things, if you have a young adult that you love that you can't get on the track, the good news is that there is help. Somewhere in Morris County, there is help. So yeah, and then I will end with, if you are trying to get your kids off of social media, bring them to the NABE. We have 1,000 programs.
That's a good plug.
So why am I here? Because they told me to. No, just kidding. Because I wanna help. I wanna share my experiences and kind of put out there the information that I've received from my experiences. Right. I am a therapist. I am a social worker for a long time, and over the years things have changed, and now we're in this cell phone, social media era now that's scary for us. My youngest happens to be 18, but it's still scary. It's as adults and as kids, and so if I can share anything, I am more than willing to. And then I have to agree with my colleagues here is speak to your kids. On your way home, talk with your partner, your spouse. Even if you are here with your kids, talk with them. What's going on? Keep it open. Put the phone away. Turn the radio down, and just talk. Real talk. No need to fluff it up. Just, how are you doing? Did you sleep last night? Did you eat okay? That type of thing. That's the one thing I hope you guys take away from this is you have to start talking to your kids, black and white. Sometimes it'll be uncomfortable, like I have said, but that's okay, because you'll both get through it. And just gotta believe in yourself and in your child, and they'll, if they see that you're there and you're opening up, they will open up as well, and they will start sharing, and hopefully it'll be in less isolation for them.
Why am I here? I'm here because I love working with kids. I've been a practicing clinician for over 30 years, and I see the changes that have occurred over the course of the last decade or so with our young people and their mental health. And I think it would be very easy for us to blame social media exclusively. I don't think it's exclusively the fault of social media or technology. I think it's a combination of factors. But that's why I'm here, because we do have a bit of a mental health crisis in this country and in this world, and we need to look at that. And as our friend mentioned, mental health impacts so much more than just the mind. It impacts relationships, it impacts futures, it impacts self-worth, and so on. The good news is, I think as human beings, we're very pliable, we're resilient, and thankfully we are. So we can change. Our kids can change. We can help them understand why change is necessary and doing things differently, although it might feel awkward or difficult. Sometimes the best experiences come out of those tough spots. So that's the good news. Change is possible. What was the last thing?
Do you have a suggestion or one idea?
My suggestion is don't be afraid to not have the answers. Yes. I don't think any child expects their parent to be perfect. They just expect them to listen and be present. And so if you don't know the answer, it's okay. Just help them to find it. Be a part of the solution. Don't be worried about being perfect.
Well, I want to join with our audience in thanking you, Mark and Jesse, Jennifer, and Adia, for being with us tonight and giving us so much to think about and so much to take with us, but also for your day in, day out dedication to the children of this community. We thank you very much. And I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening and for being such an attentive and engaged audience. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much.
John, are you joining me up here? Thank you all for coming for so much. I'm Chris Valinsky. I'm a member of the church here and a member of our committee that put this together.
And I'm John Harmon. I'm the chair of the Forum on the Green Advisory Board. Our group thinks about the next time we do this. What's the topic and what do we talk about? So I am so grateful for Mark and Jesse and Jennifer and Adia. Thank you for this. And Rich, thank you for moderating. You might think they just did this on the spur of the moment. No, they did not. They spent a lot of time thinking about what they wanted to say, responding to our questions. This is a real commitment of time on your part, and we're so grateful. And as an expression of that gratitude, we'd like to award you with a Presbyterian Church of Morristown Love First mug. It contains a gift card, but more importantly, it's a message of our mission, love first. And by the way, it shouldn't be just our mission, it should be all of our missions. So thank you so much. Yeah.
And additionally, we want to thank all of you for all you do for our communities, for our families, for our kids. And so as a symbol of that appreciation from the church, we have decided to make a donation in each of your honor to a local charity that supports children. And so for our Morris School District members, we're making a $200 donation to the Morris Educational Foundation, who supports social and emotional health for our children. And for Adia, we're making a $200 donation to Cornerstone Family Programs. Thanks for all that you do for our community.
I should make one more comment. One of the roles of the advisory board is to try to have connections into the community so we could find people like these to come to an event like this, and Chris was our main contact. Thank you, Chris. So, the Forum on the Green will retire just for a few months, but in the fall, we will have another program. It will be of interest. We will work hard at making sure it's something that you find compelling. And as a final word, there's cookies in the narthex. So thank you for coming.